Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when we begin to feel invisible in the eyes of someone we once meant the world to, whether it's a friend, a partner, or even a colleague. You start sensing the change. The appreciation fades, the effort becomes one-sided, and the connection begins to feel more like a burden than a bond. When that moment comes, psychology has something to say, and today we'll talk about what to do when someone doesn't value you anymore. Here are 10 powerful psychology-backed moves you can try. When someone no longer values you, the first instinct many of us have is to seek answers, to chase after validation, to try to make sense of the shift in energy. You want to know what went wrong, what you did, or how you can fix it. And more often than not, this leads to a pattern of overextending yourself, constantly trying to prove your worth to someone who has already stopped appreciating it. But psychology teaches us something very powerful. The more you chase validation, the less you are valued. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a deep psychological reality tied to human behavior, self-worth, and perception. You begin chasing after someone's attention, you unknowingly place yourself in a lower position in their eyes. You become the pursuer, and they become the prize. And as we know from countless psychological studies and real-life experiences, humans tend to value what they must work for. When something comes easily and constantly seeks our approval, we stop appreciating it. That's why when you chase validation, you actually devalue yourself in the eyes of the person you're trying to impress. It's an emotional paradox. The more effort you put into being seen and valued by them, the more invisible and taken for granted you become. The need for validation is natural, it's part of our wiring. As social creatures, we want to feel accepted, loved, and recognized. But the danger lies in making that validation our emotional currency. When your sense of self-worth becomes dependent on how someone else sees you, you hand them power over your peace. You allow their approval, or lack of it, to dictate how you feel about yourself. And that's where the imbalance begins. Chasing validation often starts subtly. You text first, every time. You wait anxiously for a response. And when it's delayed, you begin overanalyzing. You adjust your behavior to be more likable, more agreeable, even if it means suppressing your true self. You tolerate less respect, fewer boundaries, and more emotional inconsistency, all because you're hoping that if you just hold on a little longer, they'll start valuing you again. Psychology shows us that people don't start valuing what they no longer need to work for. They value space, mystery, self-respect, and strength. When you're always available, always accommodating, and always trying to win them back, you remove the mystery and lower the emotional investment required on their end. Now, this doesn't mean playing games or being cold-hearted. It means recognizing when your energy is no longer being reciprocated and choosing to stop overextending yourself. Pulling back isn't about revenge or manipulation. It's about restoring your dignity. When you stop chasing and start observing, you begin to see the relationship for what it truly is, not what you wish it to be. That clarity is powerful. It shows you who's willing to meet you halfway and who only stuck around because of your effort. Psychologists often refer to the concept of intermittent reinforcement, the idea that unpredictable, inconsistent responses actually increase our craving for validation. It's why people sometimes become addicted to those who treat them inconsistently. You keep chasing, hoping that maybe this time they'll return the affection, maybe this time they'll value you, but that cycle only deepens your emotional dependency. The more inconsistent they are, the more consistent you try to become, thinking your effort can fix the imbalance. But it doesn't. It just traps you in a loop where your self-worth is held hostage by someone else's emotional unavailability. What breaks that cycle is not more chasing, it's stillness, it's restraint, it's stepping back and reclaiming your sense of value from the very person who stopped seeing it. And ironically, It's in that moment when you stop chasing that people start noticing. Because silence is powerful. Distance creates perspective. And when your presence is no longer easily accessible, others are forced to reevaluate what they took for granted. Sometimes they return, sometimes they don't. But either way, you win because you chose your self-respect over desperation. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. The right people recognize it without you having to shout for attention. When someone doesn't value you anymore, let them. Let them miss the version of you they failed to appreciate. Let them walk away if that's what they choose. Because someone who truly values you won't need to be chased. They'll meet you where you stand. So, the next time you feel yourself tempted to reach out just one more time, to explain yourself, to try harder, to seek closure from someone who isn't even offering communication, pause, breathe. Remember that your worth isn't determined by how much someone else sees in you, but by how much you recognize in yourself. Chasing validation may win you temporary attention, but pulling back and standing tall earns you something far more valuable: self-respect, inner peace, and the kind of energy that naturally attracts people who are meant to be in your life. Let silence do what overexertion cannot. Let go with grace. And allow your value to speak, not through your effort, but through your absence. When someone begins to devalue you, one of the most harmful things that can happen is the quiet erosion of your self-worth. You begin to question your importance, your desirability, your role in their life, and eventually your value as a person. This is where psychology offers a powerful reminder. How someone treats you is not a mirror of your worth. It's a reflection of their perception, their priorities, and often their unresolved issues. A mistake many people make is tying their sense of value to how others respond to them. But true self-worth is internal. It has to be. Because the moment you let others define it, you give away the power to control your peace, your choices, and ultimately your future. People withdraw for all kinds of reasons: distractions, personal struggles, emotional immaturity, or simply a lack of connection. But none of those reasons automatically equate to you being less worthy. We tend to internalize rejection as a personal flaw, as if being overlooked or underappreciated is evidence of something lacking within us. In reality, it often has more to do with the other person's emotional bandwidth or their ability to show up in a relationship than it does with your inherent value. Your worth doesn't fluctuate based on someone's ability to see it. Think of it this way: if a diamond is buried in the dirt, it's still a diamond. If someone doesn't know how to recognize its value, that doesn't make it any less precious. It just means the person looking at it isn't equipped to appreciate what they found. And yet, when we feel undervalued, we often start to question whether we were ever valuable at all. We start lowering our standards, tolerating poor treatment, and shrinking ourselves to fit into someone else's limited view of us. That's when self-worth begins to deteriorate, not because it's truly lost, but because we stop recognizing it ourselves. Psychology teaches us that self-worth must be intrinsic. That means it must come from within, not from praise, not from external achievements, not even from love. Those things are beautiful, but they're not the source. They are reflections, not roots. When your worth is rooted within, it becomes unshakable. Someone can stop calling, stop caring, or stop showing up, and yes, it may hurt, but it won't destroy you, because you don't need their recognition to validate your value. You already know who you are. The process of rebuilding self-worth after being devalued starts with awareness. You must begin to notice the moments when you're compromising yourself to be accepted. Notice when you're tolerating silence instead of clarity. Notice when you're giving more than you're receiving, not from a place of generosity, but from fear of being abandoned. These are signs that your self-worth is being outsourced to someone else's opinion. And it's in those very moments that you have to pull yourself back to center. Remind yourself, I am not defined by someone's inability to see me. Often, when we're devalued, we want answers. We want closure. We think if we just understood why someone stopped valuing us, we could move on. But psychology reminds us that closure is not always about answers, it's about acceptance. You don't need to understand why someone couldn't love you fully. You only need to recognize that it wasn't a reflection of your capacity to be loved. It was a reflection of their capacity to love. That distinction is everything. It shifts the blame away from your identity and places it where it belongs, on the reality of the situation, not your worth as a human being. Reinforcing self-worth also means changing your inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself matters. If someone treats you like you don't matter and you repeat that narrative in your own mind, you begin to believe it. You begin to act like it's true. But if you stop and say, just because they don't see my value doesn't mean it's not there, you begin to separate your identity from their behavior, and in doing so, you reclaim the parts of yourself you once handed over in the hope of being chosen. Another powerful tool is surrounding yourself with people who do see your worth, not because you need their validation, but because healthy reflection builds healthy perception. The more you are in environments where you're appreciated, respected, and loved, the easier it becomes to remember who you are. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. We all need mirrors sometimes. The key is choosing the right ones. At the end of the day, the journey of self-worth is not about never being hurt. It's about knowing that hurt doesn't determine who you are. It's about realizing that someone walking away, growing distant, or failing to show up doesn't mean you're too much or not enough. It means their presence in your life has shifted. And now it's time to shift your focus back to you. Because you deserve to be seen. Not when you prove something, not when you become someone else, but exactly as you are. So when someone stops valuing you, don't shrink. Don't chase. Don't explain yourself over and over. Instead, reinforce the truth. You were always enough. You still are. And no one's perception has the power to rewrite that. When someone begins to devalue you, it's natural to want to try harder. You feel the shift in their energy, the shorter replies, the delayed responses, the absence of effort, and you instinctively compensate. You reach out more often, you become more available, and you do everything you can to keep the connection alive. But what often happens is that the more effort you put in, the less they put in. It becomes one-sided. And here's where psychology offers a critical insight. Mirroring someone's effort isn't just about keeping your dignity. It's about creating balance, clarity, and emotional safety for yourself. In healthy relationships, effort should flow in both directions. Both people invest, both people show up, and both people care about maintaining the connection. But when someone begins to withdraw, it disrupts that balance. You're left doing all the work, and that can quickly lead to emotional burnout, resentment, and feelings of inadequacy. You start asking yourself, what more can I do? When the real question should be, why am I the only one trying? Mirroring effort means you stop overextending yourself when someone else has clearly pulled back. It means you match their communication frequency, their emotional investment, and their availability. Not to play games, not to punish them, but to protect your energy and get an honest look at where you actually stand in their life. Because when you're always the one initiating, always the one holding the connection together, you don't really know if the other person even wants to be there. You're never giving them the opportunity to show up on their own. And if you don't pause long enough to let them reveal their true level of interest, you'll keep spinning in circles trying to keep something alive that might already be dead. Mirroring gives you clarity. It's a reality check wrapped in self-respect. When you stop texting first and they don't follow up, you see the truth. When you stop making all the plans and they make none in return, you see their priorities. When you stop being the emotional anchor and they drift away, you realize you were holding them in place the whole time. And as painful as that realization might be, it's also incredibly freeing because you stop living in the illusion of potential and start dealing with what's real. This doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you begin responding to energy, not fantasy. You're not assuming someone cares. You're observing whether they actually show it. You're not interpreting silence as shyness. You're recognizing it as disinterest. You're no longer writing stories in your head about why they might be distant. You're paying attention to the chapter they're actively writing with their actions. And in that space, you begin to reclaim your self-worth. Psychologists often talk about reciprocity in relationships, the idea that emotional investment should be mutual. When that reciprocity breaks, the connection becomes strained. One person begins to feel burdened, the other becomes indifferent. And the longer that imbalance goes on, the harder it is to fix. Mirroring effort stops that imbalance from growing. It puts you back on equal footing. You're no longer begging for attention, you're observing whether it's offered. There's also a deep psychological truth in how people value what they have to work for. When you give someone consistent, one-sided access to your time, energy, and affection without requiring any real effort in return, you lower the perceived value of what you offer. It becomes expected rather than appreciated. But when you mirror effort, you communicate a quiet but powerful message. I know what I bring to the table, and I'm not going to keep giving it to someone who doesn't meet me there. This creates a shift in dynamic. Sometimes the other person will notice and step up. They'll realize what they've been taking for granted. Other times, they'll disappear entirely. And as hard as that might be, it's also an answer. You didn't lose anything by matching their energy. You revealed everything. Mirroring effort also gives you space to focus on yourself. Instead of pouring all your energy into trying to revive a fading connection, you redirect that energy inward. You start nurturing your own interests, your peace, your growth. You surround yourself with people who don't make you guess how they feel. And in doing so, you attract more balanced, fulfilling connections, because the energy you tolerate is the energy you continue to receive. So if you find yourself always being the one who texts first, always the one who fixes things, always the one who cares more, pause, reflect, and begin to mirror, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Not to manipulate, but to see clearly, because the right person will notice the shift. The right person will meet you in the middle, and the wrong one, well, they'll simply fade away, proving exactly why your effort should never have been so one-sided to begin with. In the end, mirroring is about alignment. Aligning your energy with the truth of what's being shown to you. It's about staying grounded in self-respect and giving others the chance to show who they are without your constant intervention. Because someone who truly values you will never let you carry the relationship alone. They will show up. Not because you begged, but because they want to. And that kind of love, that kind of effort, that's the only kind worth waiting for. Detaching emotionally when someone stops valuing you is one of the hardest things to do, but it's also one of the most powerful. At first, it feels wrong. Your emotions scream for connection, for closure, for understanding. You want to fix things, to talk it out, to somehow bring the relationship or connection back to what it used to be. But psychology shows that when someone consistently fails to value you, continuing to stay emotionally invested only leads to more pain. It becomes a form of self-abandonment where your desire to be chosen overrides your need to be respected. Emotional detachment is not about becoming cold or numb. It's about reclaiming your power and choosing inner peace. When you stay emotionally attached to someone who no longer values you, you constantly place yourself in a state of emotional waiting, waiting for a response, waiting for change, waiting for them to notice your worth. This emotional waiting room is where most heartbreak happens, not because of what the person is doing, but because of what you're allowing yourself to endure in hopes of something better. You replay memories, overanalyze conversations, and live in a cycle of what ifs, and maybe one day. But the truth is, the more emotionally invested you remain in someone who no longer prioritizes you, the more you lose connection with yourself. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring completely. It means you create distance between your sense of identity and someone else's behavior. It's about realizing that their inability to see your worth isn't a reflection of your actual value. You stop letting their silence define your significance. You stop letting their inconsistency dictate your emotional state. When you detach, you reclaim control of your feelings. You stop riding the emotional roller coaster of someone who doesn't even realize they're taking you on a ride. It's important to understand that emotional attachment often comes from unmet needs for love, validation, security, or understanding. When someone meets those needs, even briefly, we naturally form a bond. But when they begin to pull away, our fear of losing that emotional source kicks in. We cling harder, hoping that if we just love them more, show more loyalty, or prove our worth, they'll return to who they were. That longing is natural, but it's also dangerous because it keeps you stuck in a fantasy while ignoring reality. The person you miss may no longer exist in the way you remember. Holding on to them becomes less about love and more about emotional survival. Detaching emotionally allows you to start healing. It's a gradual process, often uncomfortable at first. You might feel numb, angry, or lost. That's okay. It's part of untangling yourself from something that once felt essential to your happiness. But over time, that detachment creates space for self-reflection. You begin to see how much you've been sacrificing just to hold on. You realize that love shouldn't feel like chasing, begging, or convincing someone of your worth. It should feel safe, mutual, and nurturing. In psychology, there's a term called object constancy, the ability to maintain an emotional bond with someone even when they're not physically or emotionally present. For people with secure attachments, this comes easily. But for others, especially those with anxious attachment styles, the moment someone becomes distant, their whole sense of self feels threatened. Emotional detachment is the act of rewiring that response. It teaches you that your value doesn't disappear when someone walks away. It helps you build emotional independence, where your peace no longer relies on someone else's validation or availability. To detach emotionally, you have to start setting internal boundaries. That means being mindful of how much mental and emotional energy you're giving to someone who isn't giving it back. If you catch yourself constantly checking your phone, overthinking their words, or imagining scenarios where they suddenly change, it's time to pause. Ask yourself, is this thought serving me or draining me? That single question can begin to shift your focus from obsession to awareness. Detachment also requires self-compassion. You might feel ashamed for caring so much about someone who doesn't reciprocate. You might feel weak for struggling to let go. But emotions aren't weaknesses. They're indicators. They show you where your healing needs to happen. Instead of judging yourself, offer kindness. Understand that attachment is a human response, and letting go isn't a switch you flip. It's a practice you commit to daily. One of the most empowering parts of emotional detachment is the moment you realize you're no longer affected the same way. Their silence no longer stings. Their absence no longer consumes your thoughts. Their presence or lack of it no longer defines your mood. That's the result of healing, of creating emotional distance, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You begin to focus on your own life again, your goals, your joy, your peace. Eventually, detaching emotionally reveals something beautiful. You never needed them to validate your worth in the first place. You were always enough. You just forgot for a while because you got lost in someone else's inability to see it. Detachment brings you back to yourself. It teaches you that peace is better than emotional chaos, and that love, real love, never requires you to lose yourself to feel seen. So, if you're holding on emotionally to someone who no longer values you, give yourself permission to let go. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. Detach, not to punish them, but to protect you. Because in that emotional space you create, you'll rediscover the version of yourself who doesn't settle for crumbs, who doesn't beg for love, and who knows that anyone who can't value you fully doesn't deserve front row access to your heart. One of the most transformative things you can do when someone stops valuing you is to shift your focus back to your own life. It sounds simple, but it's a powerful act of reclaiming your attention and energy. When someone you care about begins to distance themselves, undervalue your presence, or ignore your efforts, the natural response is to fixate on them. You analyze their behavior, try to decode their silence, wonder what changed, and often end up blaming yourself. That energy, that attention, is being poured into someone who's not showing up for you. Instead of giving your light to someone who doesn't reflect it back, it's time to turn that light inward towards your goals, your growth, your happiness. Focusing on your own life isn't about being selfish or pretending you don't care. It's about prioritizing your well-being when someone else won't. When your worth isn't being recognized by another, the most empowering thing you can do is to recognize it yourself. It means taking the time you once spent waiting for a message or hoping for a change, and using it to build something beautiful in your own world. It could be starting that project you've been putting off, learning a new skill, reconnecting with friends, or simply sitting with yourself and rediscovering your own needs. Whatever it is, it's yours. And the more you engage with your own life, the less space you leave for someone who no longer values you to occupy your mind. There's a shift that happens when you redirect your energy. At first, it feels forced. You might be going through the motions, pretending to care about your goals when your heart is still tied to someone else. But over time, the act of showing up for yourself starts to build momentum. Your confidence grows. Your identity starts to stand on its own again. You begin to remember who you were before you placed your happiness in someone else's hands. This process is what psychologists refer to as self-affirmation, doing things that reinforce your own worth independent of external validation. Every time you choose to focus on yourself instead of obsessing over someone else's inconsistency, you strengthen your emotional resilience. You start realizing that peace feels better than constantly wondering where you stand, that clarity is more comforting than confusion, that your energy is precious and it deserves to be spent on things that nourish you, not on people who deplete you. You begin to see that your life is not a waiting room for someone else's love. It's a home you get to build, decorate, and live in, with or without them. Focusing on your own life also helps to shift the power dynamic. When someone senses that your entire emotional state revolves around their attention, they often lose respect. It's not always conscious, but it happens. But when you stop making them the center of your emotional universe and start focusing on your own purpose, you reclaim your power. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to prove a point, but because you've tapped back into your own worth. People are drawn to those who are deeply rooted in themselves, not to those who are constantly trying to be enough for someone else. It's also important to understand that healing and growth are not linear. Some days focusing on yourself will feel easy. Other days the pull to check in, to reach out, or to spiral into memories will feel overwhelming. That's okay. The key is not perfection, it's consistency. Every time you choose yourself, even in small ways, you're telling your subconscious mind that you matter, that your time, your energy, and your dreams are worth more than being stuck in the pain of someone else's emotional absence. You don't have to make grand moves to shift your focus. Sometimes it's as simple as waking up and deciding to take care of your body, going for a walk, eating better, journaling your thoughts, creating something new. Sometimes it's about setting boundaries, not just with the other person, but with your own thoughts, refusing to replay the same conversation 100 times, choosing not to stalk their social media, redirecting your mind every time it wanders into what-if territory. These may seem like small acts, but collectively they build emotional strength. They create distance between you and the situation that hurt you, not by force, but through self-prioritization. And slowly something incredible happens. You start to feel whole again. Not because the person came back, not because you got closure, but because you gave yourself the attention, love, and care you were once so desperate to receive from someone else. That's the moment everything changes. When you're no longer waiting for someone to value you because you've started valuing yourself. And from that place, your standards rise. You stop tolerating half-hearted connections. You stop settling for emotional breadcrumbs. You begin to attract people and opportunities that reflect the love you've cultivated within. So if someone has stopped valuing you, let that be the turning point, not where you chase them, but where you come home to yourself. Turn your energy inward. Focus on your passions, your goals, your healing. Build a life that feels full, not because of someone else's presence, but because of your own. Because in the end, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to make them regret losing you. It's to become someone who no longer needs their validation to thrive. Acceptance is the doorway to freedom. When someone stops valuing you, your first instinct might be to fight it, to question it, to try to reverse it, to hold on to the hope that things can go back to the way they were. But clinging to what used to be keeps you trapped in a version of reality that no longer exists. You begin to live in a mental loop where every thought is about how things should have gone or could be different if only you were more, did more, or tried harder. But the truth is, there comes a point where no amount of effort can fix a connection that someone else has already let go of. And that's when acceptance becomes not just necessary, but healing. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's recognizing the truth without trying to bend it. It's letting go of the illusion that you can control someone else's feelings, choices, or behavior. When you accept that someone no longer values you, you stop negotiating your self-worth through their actions. You stop basing your emotional state on their validation or attention. Instead, you begin to make peace with what is, and in doing so, you start reclaiming your power. The mind resists acceptance because it wants closure. It wants reasons. It wants the other person to say, I see your worth, and I'm sorry I let you down. But more often than not, you don't get that. You get silence. You get mixed signals. You get left to piece together the emotional wreckage on your own. And that's where many people get stuck, waiting for clarity from someone who couldn't even give them consistency. Acceptance says, I don't need every answer to move forward. I don't need their explanation to heal. I choose to accept what I cannot change, and I release myself from the prison of needing things to make sense. Acceptance also helps you stop personalizing someone else's lack of effort. When someone devalues you, it's easy to assume it's because you weren't good enough. That if you were smarter, more attractive, more fun, or more something, they would have stayed. But that's a dangerous story. It turns your self-esteem into a reflection of someone else's inability to show up. The reality is, how someone treats you is a mirror of them, not of you. People act from their own wounds, their own maturity, their own capacity to love. And sometimes their withdrawal has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with what they're unable or unwilling to give. When you truly accept that someone doesn't value you anymore, you stop chasing closure and start creating it. You start telling yourself the truth. I deserve mutual respect. I deserve effort. I deserve emotional presence. You stop needing the other person to acknowledge your value because you acknowledge it. And that inner affirmation becomes the beginning of real healing. You realize that being devalued by someone else doesn't mean you are less. It just means they weren't capable of seeing your depth. Psychology shows that emotional healing begins the moment we validate our own experience. That means acknowledging your pain without judgment. It means allowing yourself to grieve the loss, not just of the person, but of the future you imagined with them. Acceptance makes space for that grief. It allows the tears to come. It lets the silence be filled with truth. And from that raw, honest place, growth begins. You'll notice that once you begin to accept what happened, the emotional fog starts to lift. You start making decisions that are rooted in reality, not fantasy. You stop replaying the same conversations in your head, hoping they'll end differently. You stop waiting for them to come to their senses and realize what they lost. Instead, you start focusing on what you have to gain by letting go. You begin to ask questions like, what can I learn from this? How can I grow stronger from this pain? What kind of relationships do I actually deserve moving forward? Acceptance also brings clarity about your own role in the relationship, not in a blaming way, but in an honest one. You see where you may have ignored red flags, overextended yourself, or placed their needs above your own. And instead of shaming yourself, you forgive yourself. You understand that you were doing the best you could with the information and emotional tools you had at the time. And now, with the wisdom that comes from acceptance, you're ready to make better choices. Eventually, acceptance leads to peace. It doesn't mean you forget the connection or stop caring. It just means you stop hurting over it. You stop identifying with the pain. You start living again, fully present in your own life, no longer tethered to a version of the past that's already gone. You find joy in the simple things again. You rediscover your voice. You make room in your heart for new experiences, new people, new love, because you finally stop trying to fit your soul into a space where it no longer belongs. So when someone stops valuing you, don't beg them to remember your worth. Remember it yourself. Don't stay stuck in confusion, waiting for them to explain. Accept the truth they've shown you. And in that acceptance, find your strength. Because real healing doesn't come from getting back what was lost. It comes from knowing you can survive, grow, and even thrive without it. That's the power of acceptance. And that's the beginning of becoming whole again. Setting boundaries is not just about keeping others out. It's about protecting your peace, your energy, and your sense of self. When someone stops valuing you, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying harder to prove your worth. You start tolerating things you once said you never would. You ignore the red flags, make excuses for their behavior, and slowly allow your standards to shrink just to maintain the connection. But love or loyalty that requires you to lose yourself isn't healthy, it's harmful. That's where boundaries come in. They are the lines you draw, not to punish others, but to preserve your dignity and emotional safety. Many people struggle with boundaries because they associate them with rejection or confrontation. They worry that if they set limits, they'll push people away or come across as cold. But the truth is, boundaries are the highest form of self-respect. They say, I value myself enough to decide what I will and will not tolerate. And when someone stops valuing you, setting boundaries is how you stop giving them the power to hurt you repeatedly. It's how you stop reopening wounds that never had the chance to heal. Psychologically, boundaries help you separate your emotions from someone else's actions. When you don't have clear boundaries, you become emotionally entangled in the behavior of others. If they ignore you, you feel invisible. If they lash out, you feel responsible. If they withdraw, you feel unlovable. But when you have strong boundaries, you begin to realize that someone else's inability to appreciate you is not your burden to carry. You stop personalizing their behavior. You recognize that you can't control how they treat you, but you can control whether or not you continue to allow it. Setting boundaries also means recognizing when access to you needs to be limited. Just because someone wants to stay in your life doesn't mean they deserve a front row seat. If they've shown you through their actions that they don't value your presence, then continuing to give them unrestricted emotional access is like leaving your door wide open for someone who keeps walking in and breaking your things. You need to ask yourself, what has their behavior earned? Not what you wish they would do, not what they used to be, but who they are showing up as now. A boundary could be as simple as not responding immediately to their messages when they've gone days without acknowledging yours. It could mean no longer initiating conversations, stepping back from plans, or unfollowing them on social media if it constantly triggers your pain. It might even mean cutting off contact completely if that's what it takes for you to regain your peace. You are allowed to create space between you and someone who doesn't respect you. That space is not distance out of anger, it's distance out of wisdom. Boundaries also help rebuild your self-worth. Every time you say no to being disrespected, ignored, or used, you say yes to yourself. You affirm that you are worthy of mutual respect, consistent effort, and genuine care. You stop seeking crumbs of affection from someone who used to give you a feast. And in doing so, you slowly regain the parts of yourself you lost while trying to keep someone who didn't appreciate you. One of the most important parts of setting boundaries is enforcing them without guilt. When someone is used to you bending over backward, they might resist your new limits. They may accuse you of changing, of being cold, or of overreacting. But you are not responsible for how someone responds to the boundaries you need to protect your well-being. You're responsible for honoring your needs, even if it means disappointing others. Guilt has no place in self-respect. You are not wrong for refusing to shrink to fit into a space where you are no longer respected. Sometimes people only begin to understand your value once they can no longer access you the way they used to. But boundaries aren't about teaching someone a lesson. They're about making peace with the fact that your energy is not up for negotiation. You are no longer available for one-sided relationships, emotional manipulation, or love that requires you to prove your worth every day. You are only available for connection that honors who you are fully, deeply, and consistently. As you begin to live with stronger boundaries, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel less anxious, less desperate, less reactive to their silence or their mixed signals. That's because you're no longer hinging your peace on their presence. You've built an emotional fence that allows in what nurtures you and keeps out what drains you. And from that place, you begin to heal. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors with locks. You decide who gets in, how far they get to come, and what kind of behavior is allowed inside your space. And when someone shows you they no longer value you, your job isn't to prove that you're worth loving. Your job is to love yourself enough to walk away from anything that makes you feel small. Because in the end, the respect you show yourself sets the standard for how others will treat you. And that standard starts with boundaries. One of the most powerful ways to navigate through the pain of being devalued by someone is to seek support from people who genuinely care about you. When someone stops valuing you, it's easy to feel isolated, as if you're in this struggle all alone. But the truth is, you don't have to go through it by yourself. Support is one of the most healing forces in times of emotional distress. Whether it's family, friends, mentors, or even a therapist, reaching out and leaning on the people who truly have your back can help you regain perspective, strength, and ultimately peace. When you're in a situation where someone no longer values you, you often lose sight of your own worth. The absence of validation from the person who once cared leaves a void that can make you question your self-esteem. You might start wondering what's wrong with you, why you weren't enough, and why you weren't deserving of the respect and love you once shared. But this kind of self-doubt can be incredibly damaging and isolating. That's where seeking support becomes so crucial. Surrounding yourself with people who see your worth, regardless of someone else's actions, helps you remember that your value is not defined by others. They remind you of your strengths, your beauty, and your qualities that make you unique. These people offer you a mirror that reflects your true worth, not the distorted image that someone's disregard may have created. Friends and family are often the first line of support in these situations. They are the ones who have been there for you through thick and thin, who know you at your core, and who can offer comfort and understanding when your heart is broken. Sometimes just having someone to talk to can be the relief you need to process your emotions. Expressing your feelings out loud, without judgment, helps release the emotional burden and allows you to make sense of the chaos. They don't necessarily have to have all the answers or solutions. Sometimes their presence and willingness to listen are enough. Just knowing that someone cares and is rooting for you can give you the strength to take the next step toward healing. In addition to personal relationships, support from professionals such as a therapist or counselor can also be a vital tool when someone stops valuing you. Sometimes the pain is too deep or complicated to navigate on your own. A therapist can provide you with the tools and strategies to work through the feelings of rejection and abandonment, and can help you identify patterns in your relationships that might be contributing to your suffering. Therapy is a safe space to explore your emotions, your triggers, and the beliefs that may be influencing how you react to others. Through therapy, you can learn how to break free from the cycle of self-doubt and build a stronger sense of self-worth, so that when someone else doesn't value you, you won't lose sight of who you are. Another form of support that is often overlooked is peer groups or support communities. There are many online and in-person communities where individuals share similar experiences and struggles. Being part of such a group can remind you that you're not alone in your journey. It offers a sense of belonging and understanding that can be incredibly healing. Hearing stories of others who have gone through similar experiences of being undervalued or hurt by others can help you see that you're not the only one experiencing this pain and that recovery is possible. These groups offer a sense of solidarity and provide a safe space where you can share your feelings, receive advice, and feel supported by others who understand exactly what you're going through. Even in moments when your emotional energy feels drained, reaching out for support can help re-energize you. The act of connecting with others and feeling their care and empathy can restore your belief in yourself and in your ability to overcome the challenge you're facing. It's important to remember that seeking support is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it takes strength to be vulnerable and open up to others. It takes courage to acknowledge that you need help, and by doing so, you are taking an active step toward healing. Furthermore, sometimes the support you need is not only emotional but also practical. When someone has stopped valuing you, you may find yourself feeling stuck, unsure of how to move forward or what steps to take next. This is where a mentor or someone with more life experience can step in. They can provide guidance, offer practical advice, and give you a fresh perspective on how to approach the situation. Whether it's through career advice, self-care strategies, or even simply helping you see things from a different point of view, the guidance of someone you trust can help you gain clarity and make empowered decisions. The most important aspect of seeking support is recognizing that it doesn't diminish your strength or independence. In fact, relying on others when you need it allows you to grow and strengthen yourself. It enables you to face your challenges with a network of people who care about you, which in turn helps you build resilience. You don't have to do this alone. By letting others in, you not only gain the emotional resources to heal, but also reaffirm that you are worthy of love and support. Moreover, asking for help is a way of honoring yourself. It's a way of saying, I am important and I deserve to feel better. I deserve to heal, and I'm not going to isolate myself or carry this burden alone. In times of emotional distress, support allows you to rebuild your emotional foundation, heal from past wounds, and regain a sense of clarity and direction. It reminds you that your worth isn't dependent on one person's opinion or treatment of you. The support you receive from others will be a constant reminder that you are deserving of respect, kindness, and love. Ultimately, seeking support when someone doesn't value you anymore is not just about fixing the immediate hurt. It's about reinforcing your worth and learning to stand strong regardless of someone else's actions. By reaching out, you remind yourself that your value is inherent and that no matter what someone else chooses, it doesn't diminish who you are. Support is a source of strength, healing, and restoration, and it is always available to you when you need it most. One of the most powerful strategies when someone stops valuing you is to focus on personal growth. In the face of emotional distress, it's easy to fall into a mindset of stagnation, where all your energy is consumed by thoughts of what went wrong, what could have been, or what you wish would change. But this kind of thinking keeps you tethered to the past and prevents you from moving forward. Personal growth, on the other hand, is about taking control of your own development, learning from the experience, and using that pain as fuel for a brighter, stronger future. Personal growth is an ongoing journey that requires self-awareness and a commitment to becoming the best version of yourself, regardless of external circumstances. When someone stops valuing you, it's a natural reaction to feel hurt, confused, or even rejected. But instead of allowing these emotions to keep you stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, focusing on growth allows you to take these painful moments and transform them into opportunities for self-improvement. Instead of seeking validation from someone who no longer values you, you start to turn inward and find that validation within yourself. The first step in focusing on personal growth is understanding that your worth isn't tied to the actions or opinions of others. While it can be incredibly painful when someone stops appreciating you, it's crucial to recognize that their inability to value you is more about them than it is about you. People act based on their own experiences, limitations, and emotional state, and their treatment of you doesn't define who you are. Personal growth starts with realizing that you are inherently valuable, regardless of how others perceive you or treat you. This realization leads to the next step, self-reflection. When someone devalues you, it's an opportunity to take a step back and reflect on the relationship and your role in it. What did you learn about yourself during this time? What were your needs and were they being met? Sometimes we allow ourselves to be mistreated or undervalued because we haven't fully understood or communicated our needs. Personal growth means taking the time to recognize these patterns and make adjustments going forward. Maybe you need to establish clearer boundaries. Maybe you need to learn to be more assertive. Whatever the lesson, self-reflection helps you grow in emotional maturity, so that the next time you face a similar situation, you will be better equipped to handle it. Now, another critical aspect of focusing on personal growth is learning to let go of the need for control. When someone stops valuing you, it's easy to fall into the trap of trying to control the situation or change the other person's behavior. You might try to convince them of your worth, make them see your value, or beg for their attention. But this kind of behavior only exhausts you and keeps you stuck in a cycle of unreciprocated effort. Personal growth requires the wisdom to know when to let go. It's about accepting that you cannot control how someone else feels or behaves. You can only control your own actions, reactions, and mindset. By shifting your focus from trying to change the other person to improving your own life, you free yourself from the emotional weight of the situation. This process of letting go leads to the next step, embracing self-care. When you're hurt, it's natural to want to retreat and isolate yourself. But focusing on personal growth means taking proactive steps to care for yourself during difficult times. Self-care goes beyond the superficial acts of pampering. It's about tending to your emotional, mental, and physical well-being. You might take up new hobbies that bring you joy, engage in regular exercise to boost your mood, or prioritize rest to rejuvenate your energy. Self-care also means nurturing your inner dialogue, being kind to yourself, and silencing the critical voice that tells you that you're not good enough. It's about treating yourself with the same love and compassion that you would offer a close friend. Another important aspect of personal growth is developing resilience. Life's challenges, including being devalued by someone you care about, can feel overwhelming. However, resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, learn from it, and come out stronger on the other side. Instead of allowing pain to define you, resilience allows you to see challenges as opportunities for growth. When you focus on personal growth, you develop the inner strength to face life's setbacks with grace and determination. Each setback becomes a lesson, and each lesson brings you one step closer to becoming the person you're meant to be. As you focus on personal growth, you also open yourself up to new possibilities. Being devalued by someone can be an emotional detour, but it can also serve as a turning point that redirects you toward new opportunities. When you stop fixating on the person who no longer values you, you create space for new relationships, new experiences, and new growth. You might discover new passions or talents that you didn't know you had. Focusing on personal growth means not limiting your potential to the past or the person who failed to appreciate you. It's about expanding your horizons and being open to the idea that there's so much more out there waiting for you. One of the most empowering aspects of focusing on personal growth is the sense of control it gives you over your life. When someone stops valuing you, it may feel like you're powerless. But by focusing on your own growth, you reclaim that power. You decide what direction your life will take. You decide how you will respond to adversity. You choose to turn pain into progress, and you make the decision to move forward, regardless of what anyone else does. Personal growth is about taking ownership of your journey and committing to becoming the best version of yourself, regardless of the external circumstances. Finally, focusing on personal growth shifts your focus from seeking external validation to cultivating internal strength. The more you focus on growing into the person you want to be, the less you need validation from others to feel whole. You begin to trust your own judgment, celebrate your own achievements, and appreciate your own worth. This internal validation is far more powerful than anything someone else can offer. It becomes the foundation upon which you build your confidence, resilience, and peace. And in doing so, you become more prepared for whatever life throws your way, including the people who may come and go. By focusing on personal growth, when someone stops valuing you, you not only heal from the pain of rejection, but you also build a life that is meaningful, fulfilling, and empowered. The experience becomes less about what you lost and more about what you gained: strength, wisdom, resilience, and an unwavering belief in your own worth. One of the most transformative and healing actions you can take when someone stops valuing you is to let go of the past and embrace the present. This may sound easier said than done, especially when you've invested so much emotionally into a relationship, but it's a critical step in your journey toward healing and growth. When you hold on to the past, whether through nostalgia, regret, or anger, you remain tethered to a situation that no longer serves you. The energy and focus you invest in revisiting the past can drain you emotionally, prevent you from moving forward, and prevent you from recognizing the opportunities that the present moment offers. Letting go of the past starts with accepting that what has happened cannot be undone. No amount of revisiting, rehashing, or wishing things had gone differently will change the outcome. The moment someone stops valuing you, there is an implicit acknowledgement that things are no longer the same. Holding on to the idea that they will change or come back around only prolongs your emotional turmoil and keeps you stuck in a loop of disappointment and resentment. By accepting the reality of the situation, you free yourself from the emotional weight of trying to fix something that may be beyond repair. A key part of letting go of the past is learning to release negative emotions that keep you attached to the situation. It's natural to feel hurt, angry, or betrayed when someone stops valuing you, but holding on to those feelings only makes it harder to heal. Negative emotions, while valid and natural, can become toxic when they are kept alive by constant rumination. Anger and resentment can cloud your judgment, interfere with your peace of mind, and prevent you from moving forward. In order to let go of the past, you must consciously choose to release these emotions. This doesn't mean that you simply forget what happened or suppress your feelings. It means you allow yourself to feel them fully, process them, and then release them. Holding on to bitterness only hurts you. It doesn't affect the person who no longer values you. Part of letting go also involves forgiving yourself. Often, when someone stops valuing you, you may start questioning your own worth. You might wonder if you did something wrong, if you weren't enough, or if you missed some crucial red flags. The tendency is to blame yourself for the situation, to internalize the rejection and carry that burden. But self-blame only prolongs the pain and keeps you stuck in the past. Forgiving yourself for any mistakes, misunderstandings, or missed signs is an essential part of moving on. You did the best you could with the information you had at the time. There's no benefit in continuing to beat yourself up for what can't be undone. By forgiving yourself, you acknowledge that you are human, that you are worthy of love, and that your past actions don't define your present or future. Letting go of the past also involves detaching your self-worth from the opinions and actions of others. When someone stops valuing you, it's tempting to tie your sense of self to their perception of you. You might feel as though their inability to appreciate you is a reflection of your worth. However, your value as a person is not determined by how someone else treats you or sees you. It's crucial to recognize that your worth is intrinsic, not conditional. By letting go of the need for external validation, you empower yourself to find validation from within. The more you detach your self-worth from others' behavior, the more freedom you have to focus on your own growth, healing, and happiness. Letting go also means recognizing that holding on to someone or something that no longer serves you is a form of resistance to the flow of life. Life is constantly evolving, and sometimes people, relationships, or situations are part of a chapter in your story that has come to an end. When you cling to what was, you resist the natural process of change and growth. Letting go of the past means embracing the new possibilities that life has to offer. It is about recognizing that every ending makes space for a new beginning. By releasing what no longer serves you, you open yourself up to new experiences, new relationships, and new opportunities that align more closely with the person you are becoming. Additionally, letting go of the past involves focusing on the present moment. The present is where life happens. It's easy to get stuck in the past, but the past is no longer a part of your reality. It's simply a memory. When you focus too much on what happened or what could have been, you miss the richness of the present moment. Embracing the present allows you to appreciate what is in front of you now, the people, the opportunities, and the beauty of life that is unfolding. By focusing on the present, you release the hold that the past has on you and step into the freedom of living in the now. Mindfulness is a helpful practice when it comes to letting go of the past. Being mindful means paying attention to the present moment without judgment or attachment. It's about fully experiencing what is happening around you and within you, without being clouded by past experiences or worries about the future. Practicing mindfulness can help you stay grounded and centered, preventing your mind from spiraling into negative thought patterns. It allows you to recognize when your mind drifts into the past and gently guide it back to the present. This practice of being present can be incredibly healing, as it helps you to let go of past hurt and focus on what you can control, your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions right now. Letting go of the past also involves creating new rituals, habits, and routines that align with the person you are becoming. The past may have shaped who you are today, but it doesn't have to define who you will be tomorrow. By introducing positive changes to your daily life, you signal to yourself that you are committed to moving forward. Whether it's setting new goals, adopting a new self-care routine, or finding new hobbies, these changes will help you embrace the future with a sense of excitement rather than fear. Every small step you take toward your future reinforces the idea that you are capable of moving on and creating a fulfilling life. Finally, letting go of the past requires trust in yourself and in life's process. Trust that the universe or life has a way of guiding you toward where you need to be. You may not always understand why things unfold the way they do, but letting go means trusting that there are greater things ahead for you. When you release the past and make space for the present, you open yourself to the possibility of a brighter future. Letting go of the past is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. It takes time, patience, and self-compassion. But every time you choose to release the past, you reclaim your peace and your power. By letting go of what no longer serves you, you give yourself the opportunity to heal, grow, and create a future that aligns with the person you are meant to become.